Hey beautiful people, what is up? Welcome back to the channel. Me and my twisties are back because today I'm gonna be giving you guys my review slash first impressions thoughts. Let's go with that on the Ensley Reign Harvest Moon palette. Now this is not a new palette by any means. This has actually been out for some time now, at least over a year. But it took me a really long time to acquire this because she's $88.88. Yes, I said it, I didn't stutter. Judge me because I'm judging me as well. She's expensive. She's extremely expensive. So per usual, what I'm going to do is give you guys some product details, pop up some swatches. I'm going to be doing 2 eyeshadow looks for you guys, and then I'll come back at the end to give you guys my overarching thoughts. And I also want to hold this up against some of the other moon palettes that Ensley Reign has released, so you guys can see the similarities or differences, because this one is actually the most expensive of this moon collection. I don't think it's called a moon collection, but whatever, you know, all of them have moon in the name, so I'm going to call it the moon collection. So I want you guys to kind of see the similarities and the differences in this palette. So if you want to hear my thoughts on the Ensley Reign Harvest Moon palette and you love indie makeup and makeup just in general, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and just keep on watching. So let's go ahead and dive straight into product details. Per usual, the Ensley Reign palettes come with a sleeve. It's always really well packaged, but just in case you were wondering, the sleeve does have all of the product details. The back of the palette itself is kind of bland, so you don't really get much information here. So if you really want to know the information on the ingredients and all of that, you're going to have to keep the sleeve. Now this is, I want to call it a re-release, because when this was originally released, the original palette actually did not come with a mirror. But this new version has a mirror, but the price didn't change. So I just want y'all to know that the price didn't increase, which means they could have put it in the palettes in the first place. But we're not gonna go there. Anyways, so here we have the color story. So you do get 21 shades, 7 of which, or the last row, is mattes, and then you have 14 shades of shimmers. So this is a mix of special shades. So you do get multi-chromes, holochromes, duochromes. I don't think any of these is just a basic shimmer formula. So I think that is part of what contributes to this being so expensive, is that there are no standard shimmers in this palette, whereas some of the other moon palettes, they do have a mix of standard plus special shades in there. So I think that's what contributes to this. Like I said at the beginning of the video, this palette retails for $88.88. She is not cheap at all. Now I do know that there are some influencer codes floating around, so you can save 10% if you were to apply an influencer code. I'm not going to get into the packaging or the AI of it all, because I don't think I care that much. I know I don't care that much, but I do know that that is an issue for some people. So if it bothers you and you don't want to support the brand, totally understand. They have made several statements about it, and I do know that there is a plan. Well, not that I don't know nothing. Let me start there. But they have said that there's a plan to move towards using artists going forward. I just don't know when that's going to be. And like I said, this is an old palette. It's been out for about a year. So it's not going to be with this palette. Anyways, getting to some additional product details, again, that can be found on the sleeve. This palette is cruelty-free. It has a 12-month shelf life, and it is 100% vegan. I don't know why, but on the box here, they never say where their products are made. I am 99% sure that this is made in China. Okay, more like 96. But they don't explicitly state that on the box. They do say that it's distributed out of Oregon and that there's 23 grams of products in here. So please let me know if this is, you know, if it's made in China. I believe that Ensley Reign does have a mix of like handmade or hand-pressed products and ones that are not, but I can't be sure, and I'm not going to dive that deep into it. All right, so you've heard all of the product details. You've seen the inside of the palette and all of these beautiful shades. Let's dive into some swatches so that you can see what it looks like on my skin tone. I'm a medium deep complexion with a yellow or golden undertone, and then we'll come back at the end after I do 2 eye looks so that I can give you guys my overarching thoughts. Let's dive into the first look using the Harvest Moon palette. Like, this has all dark mattes, so it's gonna be a little difficult, I think. Maybe, kinda, sorta. Anyways, let's start with the orange shade. This is called Pumpkin Patch, and we're gonna put that in the crease. There's so much that I like, and none of you feel the same about us. Yeah, but the timing isn't right. So
So I'ma just let go, let go. Just seeing us more than friends, and I'ma just move on, move on. Yeah, it hurts.
And then I want to keep it simple, so I'm just going to go in with Cozy, which is like a deep, I want to say cool toned neutral brown, but it does look like it leans slightly warm. I'm going to put that into the outer part, kind of just blending it into the matte shade.
I'm not gonna wait, but it'll never be too late. You're into faith and I'm into fate. So I'ma give it some space, cause love ain't a race to be won.
And the shade that's been calling to me since, well, honestly, this shade just screams put me on the eyes, but we're gonna go a little toned down today. So we're gonna go right in the center with Bougie. Oh, it's like an orange hollow chrome. Oh, this is beautiful. Oh, this is gorgeous.
And I'll leave it to the universe.
Should I go in with a second shade? You guys know how I like to do it. Part of me is saying yes, but this is so pretty by itself. You know what this is reminding me of? House of L from Adept. Is it? I think it's Zorel. Kal-El. Kal-El? One of the L's. But the House of L palette from Adept has a shade that I am obsessed with, and this one's reminding me of that. The Adept one is a little bit shinier though. Has a little bit more punch to it. Actually a lot more punch to it, because this one is a hollow chrome. This one has different sparkles, but it's close.
I'm trying so hard not to like.
If I remember, I'll try to swatch them next to each other at the end. Okay, I kind of want to put this in front and see what happens, but then I'm also like, might be the better move. I haven't swatched the palette yet, if you couldn't tell. Yeah, like this might be too dark for the front. Oh, this one is gonna be perfect. So this is the holochrome, and that's just what was left on my finger. Yeah, that one's gonna be too dark next to it. This one is gonna be just right. So this shade is actually called Foliage. I'm just gonna press that into the little space that we have in the front and blend it in.
And maybe someday we'll find a way between love and lust, respect and pray.
Okay, you see the vision. Let me go ahead and clean everything up, and then I'll come back and show you the final look.
Seeing us more than friends, and I'ma just move on. Yeah, it hurts, I won't pretend, but I'll take you by your word, and I'll walk away before it starts to hurt. So I'ma let go, and I'll leave it to the universe.
Okay, we're gonna play in the green a little bit, so I'm gonna start off with this shade here called Hayride, and I'm gonna put that into the crease. And I'm being really gentle with the mattes in this palette because, like you saw, they're really deep. There's no, well, I guess it's like mid-tones and then deeper tones, so there's no real transition shades. But I will say the Ensley Reign matte formula is actually exceptional, and you can go in with a light hand and blend things out so that they're not as stark, so that is helpful. And then I'm just going to take the deep green Hibernate, put that into the outer corner, and blend that into the transition shade. Okay, the shade that's screaming to me the most is Foliage. I just think it's so pretty. It's like a green gold, And then I'm thinking about putting corn maze from yesterday, which I didn't get a chance to, in the inner part. Yeah, I think that works. So starting off with foliage. And this one is very, very flaky. So I recommend going in with your finger and then just kind of pressing it in to the lids so that you get a smoother application.
Communication, silence in between, one more awkward.
And then taking corn maze, which is the bronzy shade, and putting that into the inner part of the eye here. Blending that into that green.
Fix this if we get out of our own way. Can't call you up when it's late at night. Can't call it love, but
Okay, you guys see the vision? Let me clean this up and then I'll come back and show you the final look.
head on downhill dive. Can't call you cruel for changing your mind. I still can't call it a waste of time. I don't know what to call you if I can't call you by.
Okay, so I hope you enjoyed seeing the demos of me using this palette. Obviously, I did not use all of the shades in this, and there's a lot that I can get into. But let me just say that I actually really enjoy this palette. Like, the funny thing, and I'm laughing but also not laughing, is that when it comes to Ensley Reign shadows, the price really irks my gears, it grinds my gears. But there's nothing bad I can say about the formula. So if the price doesn't bother you, I can say without a doubt that they have a superb formula and you do get really, really quality shadows. I've never experienced any issues with the mattes in terms of blending or building, and I had the same like very positive experience with this one. I also want to highlight that all of the mattes here are mid to deep tone, but despite that, I was able to really blend them out and soften the edges so it wasn't too harsh. I have a medium deep complexion, so I don't know if this is going to be the same for much lighter skin tones. So it might be a palette where you have to either reach into other palettes for lighter shades, or you want to go in very, very gently. But if you have a lighter skin tone, let me know if you have this and what's worked for you. Now, in terms of the formulation of the shimmers, again, the ones that I used were extremely nice. They were buttery, they would smooth and creamy, but not too creamy. I don't have any issues with shadows creasing. I don't have oily lids. So the things that a lot of people oftentimes complain about when it comes to super emollient shadows, I don't experience that. So something to keep in mind if you are looking to me for thoughts on that. I just don't have issues with creasing with shadows. I think I've had one shadow crease on me. One, maybe two. And I remember of those ones, one of them was one of Patricia's Motherships. That stupid pink one that had a terrible formula. Oh, it was so bad. So bad. Anyways, bringing it back to these shadows. The ones that I use, I had no issues with. Just from looking at the shadows, I will say that there's a mix of textures in here. Some of these have much thicker shimmer particles. So I do think that in applying them, if you go in with a brush, they're going to show up a little bit more chunky in the eyes. They're going to emphasize texture a little bit more. But if you were to go in with your finger, you can smooth them out. I know not a lot of people are comfortable with digging their fingers into their shadows and applying it to their eyes. But for me personally, that's how I prefer to apply my shadows, my shimmer shades. Because I think it does help me, one, get a smooth application, and two, get maximum opacity. So if you want maximum opacity, your finger's typically the best bet. So you have some of these chunky shades like this one, this one, this one. And then there's a ton of like the really smooth shimmer formula. Now, in reality, that is my preference when it comes to shimmers. I prefer a much smoother formulation. And I like that there's a really decent chunk of very smooth shimmers in here. So if you were worried about like the ratio of super chunky to smooth, I think that they have a really nice balance with it being closer to like more smooth than anything else. In terms of the types of shimmers that's in here, I will say it's a nice mix of holochromes to dual chromes to special shades. I think that these are all just so darn beautiful. You know what I mean? And I understand that that's what's driving up the price. Now, typically brands can reduce the price by having one or two special shades and then having the rest be standard shimmers, but they've opted to make this entirely special shades. Do I think it was necessary? Maybe not. And quite frankly, this probably could have been two separate palettes. I know that Ensley Reign has actually started making smaller palettes now, which I think is a great choice from the brand because it helps them to bring their price point down. Because I think that is the biggest and the only complaint I've really heard people say about the brand. In terms of the color story, I don't think it's repetitive at all. I think each and every single shade is very different. It looks very different. It doesn't swatch the shade. It doesn't look like it will swatch the same next to each other on the eyelids. So I see that it's curated in a way where there are no like duplicates or super close shades to each other. I also like the variety that this presents. So you do have some like orangey coppery shades, and that gives you an opportunity to have either like a bold orange look or something that's a little bit more neutral, more wearable, more everyday friendly, which I appreciate. Then there's the green shades. So you have the green shades, again, very earthy. This is perfect for fall, by the way. And then finally, some more purpley leaning shades. So in my opinion, it kind of looks like they gave us all of like the seasons changing, which makes sense. It's called Harvest Moon. It's giving fall. So you get that orange, green, purple variation, and you can mix and match. And the mattes are also very complementary to the shimmers that they chose. Okay, so that being said, how do I feel about the palette? Would I recommend it? Should you pick it up? Honestly, I'm not watching your pockets. So at the end of the day, whether or not you choose to pick up this palette is really dependent on whether it falls within your budget. Because I cannot stress enough how uncomfortable I am with the price point of most / all of Ensley Reign's palettes. And this is probably, I think it is the most expensive one that the brand has to offer. That being said, I do think that the price is justifiable. I know. You guys might want to argue with me about it, and I fully respect that because I can understand why you would think it's not. Because it is cardboard packaging. But I will say having the mirror and having the magnetic pans does increase it. And the fact that literally every single shade, shimmer shade, is a special shade, I think the price is justifiable. Now, in deciding if you want to purchase it, you also have to take into account that aside from the $88, you will get the 10% off, which brings it down about $8. Shipping is also like $13, so you're spending close to $100 for a palette. You can get some luxury palettes with that. So it's a serious thing that you have to consider. In terms of the color story, I really love it, and part of the reason why I felt comfortable picking up this palette in the first place is because I knew that I would be able to use every single shade, and every single shade appealed to me. I haven't been feeling very multi-chromey, but I do think that these lean a little bit more wearable than like the crazy multi-chrome shades. So like for me, it was also really good value because I knew that with every single shade, both matte and shimmers, I was interested in putting it on my eyes. So the value was there. I was also, and I didn't say this at the beginning, I was able to pick this up at 20% off because lo and behold, Ensley Reign does sales. So I believe it was Labor Day that they had a 20% off sale. So I got 20% off of this palette. Now in the grand scheme of things, it came up to probably what a standard indie palette costs at this point, which is like in the $79 range. So it brought it down a little bit. So I would also recommend that if you are considering picking this up, and you don't need to get it right away, you know, Black Friday is in a month or two. So if you are willing to wait, you can probably get it there. I don't think that there's any other holidays between now and Black Friday. But I say all that to say, Ensley Reign does have sales, so there's the potential to get it for 20% off if the 10% off influencer code isn't large enough for you. I'm really happy that I picked this up. I'm not mad about it at all. I'm really glad that I have this in my collection, and I do think that I'm going to get a lot of use out of this. Quite frankly, probably more than some of the other moon palettes from Ensley Reign. So to end this video off, I want to show you guys how this compares to the other palettes in the Ensley Reign collection. I don't have every single Ensley Reign palette because they are so expensive, but I do have a couple, all of which I purchased by myself. So I want to show you guys how they all stack up. So here we have Harvest Moon, and then the second one underneath here is Flower Moon. So this is part of the Moon collection. As you can see, very similar themes. They all got some mushrooms in it. I don't know what the thing is with the mushrooms. The Flower Moon palette, I also did get the redone version of it. So this is a new and improved version where the brand took the time to switch out a couple of shades that were too close, as well as add a mirror to this palette. And I think the packaging for this new Flower Moon has shifted a little bit. So here we have Harvest Moon on top and Flower Moon at the bottom. I do think Flower Moon has much better, not better mattes, but they do have lighter matte options and things that are a little bit more vibrant, a little bit more punchy. There is some blues in this palette, but I do think that the formulation of the shimmers in this one isn't my favorite. And I don't mean that the formulation, I just mean that some of the shimmer shades in Flower Moon are a little bit squishier, a little bit more emollient. I definitely prefer the shimmers that were chosen for Harvest Moon more than Flower Moon. Like, I thought I was gonna like Flower Moon a lot more than I actually did after using it. Next we have Harvest Moon compared to Cold Moon. I'm actually gonna take off my ring light in the back because I think it's blowing them out a little bit. Okay, I hope that this is better without the ring light. So we have Harvest Moon, Cold Moon. Cold Moon, as you can see, is way, way cooler toned. And it does have, in my opinion, more icy shades. I think that this is actually a really perfect winter palette. It's a great palette if you want to get introduced to cool tone shades and you were a little bit worried about how it would perform. I think that this is a great introduction to cool tones. So it's very different because the Harvest Moon palette is definitely more warm. It leans significantly more warm than the Cold Moon palette, and Cold Moon actually has probably double the amount of mattes compared to Harvest Moon. And while I do think that this is a really pretty palette, this is one that I don't think I'm reaching for a ton. One, partly because it is cooler tone shades, and then two, because it is not just cooler tone shades, but pretty icy shades for my complexion, and I tend to avoid shades that are too icy on me. And here's Flower Moon again without the ring light. I don't know if it shows up better. Yeah. I actually think Flower Moon is a really nice spring palette. Yeah, I feel like this is much more spring than Harvest Moon, which is great because they've given us one for each season. So Harvest Moon is fall, Flower Moon is spring, Cold Moon is winter. And I think Strawberry Moon is the only one from the Moon collection that I don't have because it is really, really like poppy, like punchy, almost neon. And I'm not into that. And I think that that one is more like summer. And then the last palette that I have from Ensley Reign, and actually this is the palette that started it all. This one does not have a mirror. Why does one not have a mirror? And this is probably the cheapest palette that Ensley Reign has because as you can see from the palette, one thing it has is that instead of having 2 rows of shimmers and 1 row of matte, they actually flipped it. So you have 2 rows of mattes, 1 row of shimmers. You guys know mattes are much cheaper to make. So this from a like cost perspective is simply just cheaper because it's more mattes than shimmers. Now I picked this palette up entirely for this red shade, and I do think that this is my favorite Ensley Reign palette. Just for that red shade, I'm not gonna lie, one shade can make or break a palette for me, and that was the entire reason that I picked this up. I also don't know why, but the mattes in this are special. They like damn near blend themselves. This is definitely my favorite Ensley Reign palette. One thing that I wish the brand did is that they didn't take the print of the packaging all the way down to the actual palette itself, because it does make it harder to see the shadows. I don't know if you guys are noticing that, but I feel like it's harder to see the shadows because the background is so busy. Anyways, let me hold this up so you guys can see it compared to Harvest Moon. So here we have Groovy Garden and Harvest Moon. I do think that these are extremely complementary palettes. I think that the vibe of this is very similar in that it feels very fall to me. It feels very warm toned, leaves changing. And I also think that the Groovy Garden palette offers a lot more matte shades, especially lighter matte shades that I think this palette is missing. So if you were interested, I don't know. It's hard because the thing is, I would get the Groovy Garden, one, because it's cheaper, and two, because I think that this is like my favorite palette. I don't think that there are any real dupes in these shades here. So if you were worried about getting one versus the other and you having like dupes, I think that they are two very, very different standalone palettes. So definitely, I think you can get both. This one I will say definitely lacks the like coppery, bronzy shimmer shades. You definitely get the greens, the red, and some really cool like duochrome iridescent type shades, but you don't get the coppers and the bronzes that Harvest Moon provides. So I think you can get away with having both of these, especially if you like the color stories. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed seeing me use the Harvest Moon palette and hearing my thoughts about how this stacks up to my collection at large. If you already have the Harvest Moon palette, let me know down in the comments below what you think about it. Do you use it? Would you recommend it? How this stacks up to the other Ensley Reign palettes? Let me know what's your favorite Ensley Reign palette. If not, and if you don't know what to comment, but you want to support me on the algorithms, leave me an orange heart because it is fall, baby. We are in fall, and I mean, I just love orange hearts. Let's be real. Anyways, as always, I want to thank you guys so much for watching today's video. Thank you for supporting. If you have any questions, thoughts, comments, all that fun jazz, leave it in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe on your way out, and I'll catch you in my next one. Bye, guys.